What is the first blessing that a person should say upon awakening in the morning?
The first thing to mention in this regard is that standard halachic practice for many generations now has been to recite, the very first thing that one recites upon waking is a two-line formula which begins with the words Modeh ani, I thank you, referring to Hashem, of course, Modeh ani lefanecha, Melech Hay v'Qayam, etc. In other words, it is a formula, very brief, literally 1.5 lines in length, which states that I thank you, Hashem, for returning my soul to my body, to allow me to wake up. I thank you for being alive and for waking up this morning to a new day. This nusach, this formulation of Modeh ani, is not something mentioned by Hazal, by the sages of the Mishnah and the Talmud. It is not to be found in any of the Rishonim, the medieval halachic authorities. It is something which appears for the first time in a book called Seder Hayom, literally the order of the day, first printed in the year Shin Nun Taith, which is 1599 according to the Christian calendar, in Venice. The book was authored by a Mekubal, a Kabbalist, by the name of Shlomo Mor Dawid. We know very little about this individual. What we need to explain here is why this formulation, why this nusach came into being at all, and what exactly was it that, seeing that this formulation is something very recent, relatively speaking, what is it that one is supposed to recite immediately upon waking according to what the Talmud states? As opposed to this practice of immediately upon waking reciting Modeh ani lefanecha, we find in the Talmud Bavli, in Masechet Berachot, Samach Amud Beth, 60b, we find the following. Ki mit'ar, when a person wakes up, Omer, he should say as follows: Elohai, neshama shenatata bi tehora. Hashem, or my God, my Lord, the soul that you implanted and you placed in me is pure. Ata yisarta, you created it, etc. It goes on to say, and you preserve it, and you will return it to me in the world to come, etc. And then it ends with the blessing, Baruch ha-mahazir neshamoth lifqarim methim. So we see, according to the Talmud, immediately upon waking, a person recites a bracha, a blessing, a rather lengthy blessing, in fact, a few lines long, where we thank Hashem for giving us life and bringing us back to this world after having been asleep and having been dysfunctional or semi-conscious, if you like. And of course a person does not have a guarantee that he will wake up in the morning, and therefore we have to thank Hashem every morning for that very fact that we have awoken and that we are conscious and able to function. And immediately following that statement, the Talmud continues and says, the next thing a person does is open their eyes, or rub their eyes open, etc. So it goes on to say, Ki patach eineh, when a person opens his eyes, he says the bracha, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, of course. Every bracha begins and utilizes that formulation of what's called Shem Malchuth, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim, which means he who gives sight to the blind, or opens the eyes of the blind. And then it goes on immediately to say further, Ki tores uyathev, upon sitting up on his bed, a person says, Baruch matir asurim. Again, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, matir asurim. He who releases, as it were, those who were bound up or tied up or unable to move. Again, a reference to the fact that when a person is asleep, he is unable to move, he does not move, he is, as we said, semi-conscious. And these are the initial actions which indicate and prove that a person has awoken and is fit and functional and able to go about beginning his daily affairs and go about his business. And upon dressing, upon covering oneself, assuming that one slept either naked, which was the norm, certainly in those days, and it may well be so today also for many people, and that's perfectly all right. It's also possible that a person wears one form or another of clothing, pajamas or what have you, when they sleep, and then they remove some of that clothing and put on the normal clothing that they wear during the day. So when a person gets dressed and he needs to recognize the fact that he has been blessed by Hashem and he has been given clothes to wear to cover his nakedness and to keep him warm, etc., he has to thank Hashem for that. So the bracha, the Gemara immediately says, Ki lovesh, when a person gets dressed, he says, makes the bracha, Baruch malbish arumim, blessed are you Hashem, etc., he who clothes the naked. In other words, what the Talmud is telling us is very simply that a person must recognize and express his or her appreciation of all the goodness and kindness that Hashem shows him on a daily basis by causing him to wake up, to find himself capable of opening his eyes and moving his limbs and placing his feet on the ground and standing up and getting dressed and having what to wear. And then the same is true for putting on one's shoes. The Talmud specifies a bracha for putting on one's shoes, which is Baruch Asali Kol Sarachai, which literally means blessed are you Hashem for providing all of my needs. We all know that if we had to walk around during the day, during all our waking hours without shoes, then we would find ourselves at a very serious disadvantage. It would be very difficult, uncomfortable, sometimes because of the heat and sometimes because of the cold, and in general our feet would be dirty and be filthy all day long if we didn't have shoes to wear. Having shoes to wear is an essential and necessary fact and part of daily existence for all, or almost all, normal human beings. So therefore we are to thank Hashem for all these benefits and everything that Hashem provides for us, starting with the fact that we wake up and then proceeding on to the various facts of our ability to function, to move, to open our eyes, to stand up, and the things that Hashem provides for us, such as clothing and shoes. All these things are to be mentioned and appreciated by us immediately as we do them, without any delay. And this is what we find in many of the early halachic authorities in their writings. For example, in the Rambam, in Yichot Tefillah Perek Zayin, Halacha Gimel, the 7th chapter, Rambam writes, B'sha'a sheyikas b'sof shenato, when a person awakes at the end of his sleep, as opposed to waking up in the middle of the night when one intends to continue to sleep, mevarech, he makes the following bracha, v'hu al mitato kach. This bracha he recites whilst still on his bed. Rambam is very particular to stress that a person makes this bracha whilst still lying on his bed, before he even sits up, before he puts his feet on the ground, etc. Rambam says, Wuhu al mitato, he says the following bracha, Elohai, haneshama shenatata bi tehora, etc. The bracha that we mentioned, that we read before from the Talmud, which is the Nusach HaBavli, the Babylonian version of this bracha. There is also an Eretz Yisrael version, which we will discuss later. But the point is clear. This bracha is to be said immediately upon waking. And then the Rambam continues, Keshelovesh b'ghado, when he puts on his clothes, mevarech Baruch, etc., Baruch Atah Hashem, Malbish Arumim. And when a person puts on his shoes, as we mentioned before, he makes the bracha, Sha'asari Kol Sarachai. The Rambam lists all these various brachot mentioned in the Talmud, the Masechet Brachot, Daf Samech. He lists them all, each bracha pertaining to a particular action, to a particular event, as it were, that occurs upon waking, immediately upon waking. And it is only later that Rambam mentions that when one washes one's hands as preparation for tefillah and kriyat shema, only then does Rambam mention washing one's hands and making the baracha an natilat yadayim. And the position, the shita of Rambam regarding this matter is that one is required always, before every tefillah, shaharith, minha, arvith, and every time one reads kriyat shema, morning and evening, if one happens to be reading shema without tefillah, for example, one must do natilat yadayim from a vessel, from a keli, in exactly the same way as one does before eating bread. This is a point that we shall discuss and elaborate upon on another occasion.
The production of these videos and maintaining this channel demands much time and money. If you enjoyed this video, please show your appreciation and support. To make a donation, please go to www.machonshilo.org and press the PayPal button, which appears on the upper right-hand side of the home page. To sponsor a video or purchase Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael, please write us at office@machonshilo.org.